Welcome back to Made for More. I am your host, Holly J. Moore. I am a divorce lawyer who is passionate about helping you and all of us to use the difficult times and adversity in all of our lives to grow and show up as the best version of ourselves. I am joined today by my producer, Aaron
I
Bender.
was excited to see this guest on the docket
You were
today.
so excited.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So,
Yeah.
Danielle Byard Jackson is a female friendship coach. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I'm learning all of these jobs that are created, available, but she's talking about like girl groups, girl friends, how difficult it is for adults to make new friends.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
actually
immediately
true.
thought about all the girl trips you take with your friends you've known for 30 years, 30,
40 years.
40 years.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited that you get to talk to her about this.
Yes. Yes, it is crazy. I didn't even know it was crazy until I would like meet somebody and it's like, "Oh, how do you know so and so?" "Oh my gosh, we go way back. We have been friends for 5 years." And I'm like, "Oh, like is that going way back? Cuz I've known my best friend for 40 years." We are joined today by female friendship coach Danielle Byard Jackson. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am really excited about this conversation because I think what a lot of people don't realize is how actually hard it is to make friends as an adult, right?
Yeah. I hear a lot of shame around it. A lot of people kind of have that feeling of, I should already have this figured out. But I let them know, there's research that says that we tend to replace half of our friends every 7 years. And so to me, it shows that it's worthwhile to learn the skill of positioning yourself to invite new connections into your lives. But it's something we have to learn over and over again.
Interesting. So Aaron and I were talking before we started talking to you. I have a group of girlfriends and they have been my friends for 40 years.
That's awesome.
I know. I feel really blessed about that because what I was telling him is he's like, "That's so crazy." And I'm like, I actually didn't know that was crazy until I would talk to other people and people would be like, "Yes, we go way back. Like we've been friends for 5 years." Like, and I'm just like, wow, like I've been friends with my friends for 40 years. So is that abnormal?
No, it's not abnormal. I
Okay.
always tell people, it's such a blessing, absolutely, to have friends who've seen you evolve. And on average, men's friendships do tend to last longer than women's friendships, but they have less
Really?
platonic intimacy. So what I encourage people, because we so often conflate relational success with longevity. And so if we have maintained healthy, intimate friendships for 40 years, absolutely, that's amazing. And that's what a lot of us strive for. And on average, yes, healthy friendships likely are going to last longer than those that are dysfunctional. But I tell people who maybe have not experienced that kind of longevity to rethink how they measure relational success. Because if you have a long-term friendship, but it's one where you don't feel seen or valued, or you end up regressing to the person you were when you met them in the 8th grade, and you don't like how you feel in the friendship, but you feel like, well, I want to have friends, so I guess I'll just stay. So just really interrogating people to, encouraging people to interrogate the messages they've downloaded about why they should stay in certain friendships, and to constantly ask themselves along the way, is this a quality relationship? So I think it's terrific to have had friends for that long. And I know that's something that a lot of people aim for.
Yeah. So you said something really interesting, which I did not know, that men's friendships last longer than women's generally. Why is that?
Yeah, so most times when people hear that, they'll say, oh, well, yeah, because women are so petty, this and that. And that's not exactly what's going on. What researchers believe is that women's friendships are more fragile, but they do have more platonic intimacy. So for a lot of men, and again, I'm generalizing here and I cannot speak for every individual, but a lot of the studies keep finding the same tendencies and habits. And what they find is that for men, they tend to keep a lot of distance in their friendships, and simultaneously will have had a friendship that lasted 25 years, but they only talk to the guy once a year. You're not often going to find that among women. For women, often they have high standards of closeness in their close relationships, both romantic and platonic, but women tend to be more deeply integrated into each other's lives, which does increase the likelihood of there being certain kinds of relational conflict. So to say, you know, oh yeah, me and my boy have been friends 30 years. Well, ask them intimate details about the other person's life. A lot of them, unfortunately, can't tell you what the friend does for work, how his marriage is going, how his finances are going. And women can rattle off those details. And so we have to look at, okay, closeness and longevity, what's the relationship between the two? But yeah, that tends to be a standout difference to me as well for our different friendships.
Yeah, that's actually so true. I mean, you know, sometimes my husband will get together with his friends and it's like, well, how are they doing in this or that or whatever? He's like, well, we didn't talk about that, you know, like God forbid we get into any actual life stuff. That does check out. You also said something else that was interesting, which is people replace I think you said their friend group every 7 years. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so the research, and I'm curious about this because this finding did come out pre-pandemic, so I'm always curious about what that looks like now. But it finds that we replace about half of our friends every 7 years. And so, you know, sometimes when I say that, it depends on my audience, right? If you're a person who sheds friendships quickly, that might make you feel very justified. And if you hold on to friendships forever, that might make you feel like, oh, am I doing something wrong? And so, you know, this is because of a lot of different things. One, you evolve as a person. So for a lot of us, maybe it's not wise that you stay friends with the people you were friends with at 22 because the you that was friends with them at 22 has evolved and it's no longer appropriate. You have different worldviews and different goals. And so to some point, it would be a detriment to be so closely involved with people who see you as a former version of yourself that maybe wasn't the healthiest version of yourself. So there are lots of different reasons. Circumstances change. People shift jobs. So maybe you were besties with somebody at work and your job changed. And we just evolve. So it's due to so many different factors. Proximity. You know, we know from the research that people who are in close proximity tend to stay friends. They tend to spend more time together. So when a person moves, yeah, it does now take more effort to keep that friendship going like it would with any other relationship. And so it's normal to have that kind of natural friendship pruning. But my theory is that a reason why a lot of people are feeling disconnected is because they have a low churn rate. So if we are having our friends kind of half of them replaced every 7 years, I get curious about the pace at which you're inviting new connections in. So that might be why some people are getting to 1 or 0 friends, because some are falling off due to life. But what are you doing to invite new connections in? And if we're not doing that, then you are going to see a little bit of a shift in adulthood.
A prenuptial agreement, or sometimes called a premarital agreement, is an agreement that two parties enter into before they get married that basically chooses to deviate from state law. It assigns rights and responsibilities regarding assets and debts that are acquired during the marriage. Some common misconceptions about prenups are, one, that they basically doom the marriage to failure, or that it's really planning to divorce, and neither of those things are true. But the real value of a prenup is talking about and creating rules around how the things that you acquire during the marriage are going to be characterized. A prenup can protect things like art collections, real estate portfolios, businesses, all those types of assets. The ideal timeline to get a prenup is not 2 weeks before the wedding. The final version of a prenup has to be presented to the parties 7 days before they actually sign it. So there's like a 7-day waiting period. As soon as you get engaged, you should seek a lawyer's advice and counsel on a prenup and start the process then, because the closer the prenup is signed to the wedding, the more likely that the court is going to think there was some sort of duress involved in that person signing it, and they have to prove that the prenup was signed voluntarily in order for them to be enforced. At More Family Law Group, we represent a lot of high-profile people, celebrities, professional athletes, business tycoons. If you already have a lot of assets, or you think you're going to be acquiring a lot of assets during your marriage, we are the best ones to protect that for you and help you make your marriage stronger. Call More Family Law Group today.
So I have, you know, my friends that I've been friends with forever, and I'm so thankful for them. But of course, like, yes, everybody evolves, life happens. And so the dynamics of the friendship change. And like, I don't live in the same town as them. So it's not like we're getting together every day or weekly or whatever the case may be. And then I have had new friends come into my life in the past, 5 years or 7 years, whatever, that, maybe those friendships are closer than my like original friends. So what, but okay, I guess the question I wanted to ask is the new friends that have come into my life, I have found it challenging to kind of enter into really meaningful friendships where you're just really vibing like as an adult. It does feel a little bit challenging. And the friends that have come into my life, in my adult life, we'll just say, it has been very organic. I didn't necessarily go out and seek them. So can you talk a little bit about, because I know you have formed a group where it's like, it almost kind of, you teach people how to make friends and you talk about how to invite these new connections into your life. So talk a little bit about like, is this something you can force and is this something that you can really intentionally do, or does it have to be sort of an organic, like we were both in the same, place in life and physical place and all of that kind of stuff and it happens organically? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, so I like to use the word intentional. And yeah, you have to be intentional. Now, it's a beautiful thing when those like serendipitous moments happen, right? Let's say I have a kid and she's in dance class with this other kid's mom and we're chatting it up and we're like, oh, we have a lot in common. I mean, how amazing when those things happen, but that is how friendships happen, is being out and about and living life. But unfortunately, for a lot of us, things have shifted. If you are in your mid 30s to mid 40s, that time is called the friendship dip, is what some people refer to it as, because this is a period of time where our social growth kind of restricts a little bit, because the research finds that your social network grows and grows until about the age of 26. Some studies have said until the age of 30, at which it begins to decline. But this makes sense. This is a time period where you're really grinding at work. You're trying to build something for yourself. You might have children that kind of, slow your pace a little bit. You might be caring for aging parents. There's so much that's happening. And so, yes, we have to be more intentional. Then you put remote work on top of that. And the workplace was the number one place where adults were making friends. You're spending 40 hours a week there. So because you have people who have so many obligations in adulthood, and then you have remote work, so now you're spending 40 hours plus at home, then we're in a culture where there's a lot of things that that perpetuate isolation. We have, you don't have to go to the library. You can get it on your Kindle. You don't have to go to the movies. You can watch it on Netflix. We used to have bowling leagues and civic engagement. So a lot of our social infrastructure has changed, which does require people to be more intentional about how they're going to connect with other people. But I don't think intentional means force. Intentional means, like anything, as an ambitious, high achieving woman, we're thinking through with a plan. Oh man, you know what? On Fridays, I'm going to start going to this club because it looks really cool. Or you know what? I think I need to join a book club. Just that is strategy. I think I need to do this to get connected with other women. And so we have to be strategic, yes, because those friendships might not unfold so easily as they did when we were 19. And the last thing I'll say here is this, because I think it's interesting framing for the conversation around how much effort should we put into this. There's one study where they asked people, do you believe that friendships should be easy, natural, and organic, or do you expect that they might take work? They followed those people over the span of 5 years. The people who said, I think it should be easy, natural, and organic, were reporting greater feelings of loneliness than the people who said, I expect it might take work. So to some degree, if we think, well, it should just happen easily, then you don't put any effort and you find yourself being maybe passive to it, and then you don't have connections. For the person who's willing to be a little strategic and think, what do I need to do? Where do I need to place myself? Maybe I need to follow up with that person. I should be better about that. That person who's thinking and trying is probably more connected over time. And so don't force individual relationships, but in terms of letting yourself have permission to get strategic about it, the way you would about dating or parenting or climbing the corporate ladder might really benefit you.
Interesting. So can I share one of my biggest frustrations with adult friendship? And
Please,
maybe you can give me, maybe you have a tip on how to navigate this. So, because I do think any relationship takes work, a romantic relationship, a friendship, a parent-child, like nothing good comes easy, right? So any relationship takes work. And I feel like the biggest part of friendship is showing up. Like that's most of it, right? Like how can you grow a relationship if you don't show up for each other on the phone, in person, doing something, spending time together or whatever? And what you said makes a lot of sense about this dip, you know, because I'm 44 years old. So it's like the past 10 years, you know, life happens really fast. Kids, work, all those things. But I'm like a show up person. Like if we say we're going to do a girls trip, like let's do it. Like what do you need? You want me to come to you and carry you on my back to get to the place? I'll do it. But it feels very difficult to find somebody else with that attitude that's like, yes, we said we're getting together. Like I will show up at all costs. How do we navigate that when everybody is so busy and maybe other people don't prioritize a friendship in that same way?
Yeah, so the first thing I like to encourage people to do, which might feel a little unnatural, but it works, and that's to let people know that you're being intentional. So instead of trying to, I think a lot of times we're trying to gauge how the other person operates, and then that's how we show up. We quote unquote match energy.
Yes.
No, you can tell a newish friend like, oh yeah, I take friendship very seriously. Like I'm the kind of person who, if we make a plan, I'm ready to do it. I just want to like really have active friendships. That's really important to me.
Active
that doesn't sound desperate,
yes.
Demanding, clingy, but it lets a person know from the beginning, hey, that's where I am. And if you have a person who they cancel plans a lot, and you know, I'm not going to say it's right or wrong, but they kind of want to live a little more moment to moment.
Yes.
And to them, culturally, it doesn't feel like a big deal, then I'm not going to vilify that person, but it becomes an issue of compatibility. I can like you and we can have a long history together. But if one of my values in friendship is I like to commit to a plan and then we go, and I like to do active things together and not just send memes all the time, there's nothing wrong with your style if it's different. But for me, I'm looking for something different. And for a lot of people, I see them having a frustration because your friendship styles simply aren't compatible. And if you communicate to a person like, hey, I like to kind of get together, and if we say we make a plan, girl, I'm already booking the trip, right?
Yes,
like,
yes.
Yeah. You know, and then if they're kind of like, yeah, but I don't know. And sometimes I just don't like to commit. Totally fine. But I'm going to experience more frustration and disappointment because our styles don't match. Or I'm going to be increasingly resentful because I do decide to hang around. I'm trying to adapt to this person's style, but it's not satisfying to me. And so if I announce, hey, this is where I am, can you meet me in the middle? And they're like, yeah, it feels like too much. Totally fine. I'm going to be disappointed. Maybe I keep this person in my life. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. But then I shift my attention to people who are ready. When we say girls trip, they're like, let's go. How much? Right. What do you need? Who do I Venmo? Right? Yes. Because I like to have
I love those people.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yes. So this sounds a lot like dating. Right? Like, I mean, I'm just like, wow, this is like dating. Like, you know, and how important communication is and compatibility and all of those things.
Yeah, you know, I like to remind people it's a relationship. And I think what happens is if a lot of us subscribe to that belief that like, well, friendship should be, you know, kind of organic and natural, but we don't say that about romantic relationships. Right. And in romantic relationships, we anticipate conflict. We anticipate that we need to have a conversation. What's your style? Do you like to text? Do you like to call? We give space for having those conversations. We allow ourselves to be devastated if it doesn't work out. It's a breakup and that's hard. But with friendship, it's like a whole different set of rules, even though it's a relationship. So do you allow yourself room for healthy conflict and we can disagree and then I'll see you again tomorrow? Do we have permission to have a conversation around like, hey, what's your communication style? What do you like? Or do I feel like, oh, I shouldn't have to have that conversation with friends. They should just know. But for a person I'm dating, I anticipate that I'd have to like let them know what I like, what I don't like. But my friend should just kind of know. It becomes really unfair. And it also kind of makes it so that maybe we're going through friendships more quickly because we're subscribing to the belief that like, if we're friends, I shouldn't have to say it. But our friends are not mind readers. You know, I would like my friends to tell me, what are your preferences? What are the things that I say that annoy you, right? I'm still going to show up as me, but I want that data. I want to know, how do you best feel loved so that we can get it right? I don't want friends who are like, well, Danielle should just know. It becomes a test, and then I don't know if I'm providing adequate support if you don't give me the data I need on how to show up for you as a good friend.
Yeah. Wow. This is so fascinating because you're so correct. Like, this is just another relationship in our life, but for some reason we've kind of put it in a box and we're not applying the same sort of rules and standards that we would maybe to a romantic relationship. So what are you, how do you get over a friend breakup? What are your thoughts and tips on that?
Yeah, so first, give yourself permission to feel all the things, which sounds very simple, but I've noticed that we kind of hold space for friends when they're going through a romantic breakup. We're like, oh my
Right.
gosh, girl, okay, it's okay. And we're like understanding. But if she
Yeah.
were to tell you, like, yeah, my friend and I think we just ended,
Yeah,
we're
we
kind
just
of
broke
giving
up.
advice like, yeah, we're kind of giving advice like, well, she was probably a fake friend anyway, and you can find new friends. And so it's very dismissive. It's very like, you can get a new friend, and she was probably awful, but with a romantic partner, we're giving space. We're checking in for like months. Are you okay? Oh my gosh. I see him with the new girl. Are you okay?
Yeah.
But for friendship, there's something about it where we're like, well, she was fake anyway, probably, and you don't need that in your life, and get a new friend. And so the first is like, yeah, if you have a person who's like intimately aware of what you're going through financially, romantically, she's helping you with your kids, she's your confidant every weekend, that is agonizing to no longer have that person in your life. That is
Right.
really hard. Psychologically, women start to feel like failures because a friendship didn't work out. There's shame around that. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me that I can't keep a friend? So first step is like, yeah, a relationship you really valued is gone. That is really difficult. So letting yourself do that, okay? The
Okay.
next thing is, if you need to start moving forward in a way that allows you to not necessarily be distracted, but invite new things into your life, especially if you had that kind of friend who you were texting all the time and you guys hung out every weekend. That might be hard because now there's this huge gap in your social calendar. So what are some hobbies you were putting off because it would have taken you away from your friend? Let's do that now. You like yoga? Let's switch it up. Still do your yoga, but maybe in a new neighborhood. Like, let's literally position ourselves to invite new people, faces, ideas. You also need to prep your story for mutual friends. This is a source of anxiety for people. All right, we have a lot of shared friends. They're going to ask me about what happened. I'm going to avoid them. Figure
Yeah.
out what you want to say. Yeah, I don't know what happened between us. I'm still trying to figure it out, but if I figure it out, I'll let you know. But tonight, girl, I'm
Yeah.
focused on you, right? Because for some of us, it's not helpful to rehash. Then they're telling you what she said. So now you've got new data that you're ticked off about. Like, really setting boundaries with, are you going to still follow her on social? Are you going to still talk about it every afternoon with mutual friends? How can you move forward? And what are the habits you have that are making it really difficult? And the last thing I'll say that sounds a little bit woo woo and fluffy, but it works, is there's some research that says that if you allow yourself to identify one thing you are grateful for during that friendship, you're more likely to move forward without bitterness. And so I know it's hard, especially if she betrayed you in some way, but can you at least say, you know what? She really introduced me to some great music. If you're like reaching at the bottom of the bucket for something, but it
Yeah.
allows you to move forward a little more open-hearted, instead of being the bitter friend who keeps talking about your ex-friend at brunch. And so be
Right.
grateful for the time you had together, introduce new friends into your life, and you'll probably still think about her for years to come. And that's okay. But what lessons can you take from that moving forward? And that's the best you can do.
Right. Wow. Um, how important do you think friendship is to adult women?
Oh, it's critical. It's critical. And a lot of times I think if people knew a lot of the research on it, we'd prioritize it more or have more urgency around it. Because a lot of times when we talk about friendship, for some people, I notice an attitude of almost like talking about it recreationally, like people to hang out with, or we talk about it very romantically, like, oh, I love my girls, and that's great. But the research finds that there's a direct connection between how happy and healthy you are and the quality of your relationships. And I keep
Yes.
emphasizing quality because I don't care how
Right.
long you've been friends, and I
Right.
don't care how many friends you have. If you
Yes.
can't be yourself, if they're not showing up to support you and it's been 20 years, that's some wear and tear on you. That's not worth it.
Yeah.
So there's research that finds that women who are friends with other women, and if they're women who can really regulate their emotions, it helps you to regulate your emotions better. Heart disease is the #1 killer of women, but if you have a quality female friendship circle, it cuts your risk by 30%. They find that
Wow.
women who have female dominated circles make more money at their jobs and they advance more quickly professionally. They find that women who are friends with other women, they what is it? Oh, it decreases your cortisol, which is your stress hormone.
Yeah.
So friends aren't magic. It's not necessarily that if I have friends, I'll have no problems, but friendship acts as a buffer to life's inevitable stress. So the wear and tear that life's going to do to me anyway, my friends help to absorb some of that. So if I don't have friendships, it impacts everything from my health to my stress to depression to my sleep to my fitness. And so I think if people kind of knew, oh, this is the secret to me being happy and healthy, I wonder if it would make us more urgent about it.
Wow, that is really staggering. So for my last question, what tips would you give today for anybody watching or listening to this and they're hearing your words and it's resonating with them and they're like, I really do need to prioritize friendship more in my life? What tips can you give to them that they could do today?
Yeah. So if you're just saying I need to be more intentional at friendship, the first is I would say, I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but it will help, is to read up on the benefits of it and to read up on the dangers of not having it. They're saying that people who have a sustained day-to-day loneliness, it's just as phically detrimental as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But when we think about health, we think about that kind of stuff. We don't think about, do I have good relationships? So the first thing I would say is read up on the benefits and dangers of not having it. I think that'll light a fire under your butt to realize that intellectually. Then ask yourself, what's missing? What do you wish you had more of? Is it more time for friends? Then start there. Because I know it can be overwhelming to feel like I need to do an overhaul of everything. What are you hungry for in your relationships? More time? More intimacy? Maybe you feel like, man, I love my friends, but it's kind of surface. And I would like to talk about deeper things. Okay. So what would be the first step? You going first and mentioning something vulnerable? You saying to friends, hey, I know we goof off a lot, but I feel like I don't know what's going on with you guys for real. Let's talk about it, right? Do you just need to go first? So identify what's missing and think about what you can control to get you one step closer to enjoying that with your friends. And if when you do that, you realize that the people you're doing it with, you don't think it's possible with those people, then I think that's a whole other conversation. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Keep them in your life, right? Just kind of put them appropriately where they need to go in your life. And it might be time to introduce new connections into your life. But the last piece of advice I'd give for the person who's ready to go out there is you have to adopt the identity of a connector. If you tell yourself, you know what, I'm a connector. That is who I am. You will start to see yourself texting when people come to your mind, waving hello to the guy across the street, following up that girl at your job. Adopt it as an identity. It's not just a behavior, because if you just say, I'll try connecting more, then you're only going to do it during these fleeting moments of confidence instead of saying, this is who I am and embodying it. Right. And then those behaviors become an extension of who you are. And so if anybody's feeling discouraged or confused about how to get that going, I would just encourage them that it's never too late to start getting yourself one step closer toward the kinds of friendships that you truly, genuinely have been dreaming of.
Amazing. I love this. This is great. Danielle, thank you so much for being here and for imparting this wisdom on us. It's really looking at friendship in a whole new way, and I really appreciate you for that.
I'm so glad. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I've got just a little bit more to say. One of the biggest epidemics in our society right now is isolation and lack of connection. And sometimes people think, the only way you can get this as an adult is maybe through a romantic relationship. But even that really is not the same as a friendship. And particularly for females, there's nothing like your girls, right? So, but life gets busy and life tends to pass us by and we forget to really prioritize our friendships. And it's maybe not even that we forget, but it can be difficult to prioritize your friendships. But I love what Danielle said. Friends are magic. And there's so much research behind how important friendships are and how it helps us both physically and mentally. And so I loved what she said about adopting the identity of a connector. I'm going to institute this in my own life because I know I can get really busy and I can maybe not prioritize my friendships as much as I should or as much as I want to, but you got to be intentional about it. So I hope you will take the challenge as I am taking to really start to really think of yourself as a connector and really prioritize these friendships. And of course, you were made for more, so I know you can do it.